So here's what we're gonna do today. We'll talk about, Adnan Hoca briefly met you during the seminars, but I never had a chance to meet you. So what we want is that we want you to introduce yourself very briefly, and I'll tell you, what to say in a little bit. But like today's webinar is about environmental education and environmental justice. So we'll talk about a couple of key concepts in relation to environmental education. One of which is sustainable development. And then we'll talk about like United Nations global goals. And then we'll talk about several concepts in relation to social justice curriculum. So we'll talk about lesson planning, materials design, and textbook analysis. You are fourth year students in your program, so I'm sure you have done lots of lesson plans, and you've probably done like lots of like materials development and evaluation projects. But in relation, we'll talk about these in relation to social justice language teaching. So not just designing a lesson plan with like emphasis on 4 skills, but how do we write social justice objectives, and how do we address social justice issues through the materials that we have. And we'll talk about why environmental education is a social justice endeavor, because last year, especially when we talked about environmental education and when the students did their social responsibility projects, the question was, is this related to social justice? I'm not sure. So we will make a better connection between environmental education and environmental justice today, so that you will be able to justify why you are interested in environmental education. So before we begin, and we'll introduce ourselves in more detail as well, but I want to start with, I see Burak Can on my left here. So should we start with Burak? Do you prefer Burak or Burak Can, or both of them?
Burak.
Burak, okay. So I want you to tell us, and also this is the first time that you are meeting each other. Who are you waving at, Adnan?
I'm waving. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear different noise in the background of somebody else's.
Yes, could you please mute your microphones? Anybody other than Burak, because he's going to speak now. So I want you to tell us about your, not about your name, what your name is, your school, and why you're interested in our project or in these issues. And also like, something to remember you by. What's interesting about you? What do you want us to know about you, or how should we remember you by? Okay.
Okay. I'm Burak. I study at Sivas Cumhuriyet University, 4th grade student. And also I am a web developer. I'm interested in web development. And also I wanna improve myself about PHP computer language. Mm-hmm. And also I study in a company about web development, web projects, etc. Also, I'm interested in a social justice program because I was the leader of global culture community in my department. So I like to communicate with people and also talk with them, also know foreign students, foreign people, different cultures, different people. And also I think that social justice project will help me about improving myself. On the other hand, I can improve my English thanks to social justice project. Also, I am from Çorum. That's all.
How is being from Çorum related to social justice?
Çorum is a little city, but I think that I can also change Çorum from Çorum to the world.
From Çorum to the world. That's a good, like, yeah, title for your project. Okay, thank you, Burak. Kadir?
Yeah, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Kadir.
As you can see, my name is Kadir Anapala, and I'm currently having education at Turkish University. And the reasons for being interested in those projects are the gender roles, gender equality. Like I'd like to living in a world that Miss Ortaçtepe drum get truck and Mr. Yılmaz is cooking for his wife. So I'd like to switch the roles, make the roles equal. So that's why I'm in this project. And that's all, I guess.
Right. Anything interesting about you that you want us to know other than any hobbies?
Well, you can remember me with my height. I'm 2 meters and 3 centimeters.
Really?
That's how you remember me.
Okay, good. So I won't have trouble, like, recognizing you when I come to Trabzon. Yeah. Fatma.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Okay. My name is Fatma, and I'm attending from Sivas Cumhuriyet University. I'm 22 years old, and I want to say that I'm a very social person, and I want to talk with people. So I attend this project because I am planning to reach more and more people, thanks to this project.
Mm-hmm. Anything interesting that you want to share? Are you also 2 meters?
Anything? No.
Any hobbies?
I like traveling and reading books. That's all.
Okay, good. Selçuk?
Sorry. Hello.
Hi, Selçuk.
I am Selçuk. I am Selçuk Özçelik, as you see. I am from attending Atatürk University. I am senior student in ELT department. I am interested in this project because I believe that if we are starting equally as a people, as a nature, as an individual, as a maybe for everything, for every creature in the world, we should how can I say? We should improve the world, like this project and like such like these projects. So therefore, I am. Except this project, I am interested in linguistics, actually sociolinguistics, and I am starting about sign language, actually sign language developmental periods. So I think that who deaf and dumb persons have a help in the society, as you know. So therefore, I am again.
Okay.
That's all.
Any hobbies that you want to share with us?
Actually, not.
Can you?
Not.
Not, okay. Okay, let's move on to Merve and Nazan.
Okay, after you. Yeah, okay. So my name is Nazan.
Nazan, can you get closer to the microphone?
So my name is Nazan. Could you hear me?
It's kind of like echoing. That's why I said, like, if you get closer.
Okay. So now?
I think it's better.
I guess it's the building itself. It sounds like there is nothing inside the building and it makes echo, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you're right. I am in a classroom, actually. In a classroom.
Yeah, it's better, Nazan.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Nazan. I am from Trabzon University. I am a senior student, 4th grade. I am 24 years old. My aim, actually, I am a part-time teacher in a private school. And in this school, I do not only aim to teach students how to speak better English or how to master in grammatical rules. I also aim to consider them in every way. I mean, I am also interested in their social development, psychological development. In every way, I would like to teach them. Not teach them, but let's say guide them. So my reason to participate in this project is to develop myself in terms of these issues. And yes, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Merve?
Hello, my name is Merve Kılıç. I'm studying at Trabzon University and I'm from Artvin. Actually, there are lots of reasons for being interested in this project. First of all, I want to touch more people's opinions, actually. For example, I had some Black friends. I worked with them last year for a community service course. And I recognize that the people who live in Trabzon behave rudely to some extent. And this is my guideline, actually. Therefore, I decided to participate in this project.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yes, yes, of course.
So you said something to remember you by.
Yes.
For me, I can say that I am a very sensitive person, maybe unfortunately. Sensitive to every kind of people. So maybe this is the fact you can remember me.
Yeah, that's good. How about you, Merve?
Actually, I'm a social and also a sensitive person. This is our
weaknesses, maybe.
Yes, maybe weakness.
Let's say strength and weakness.
Yes,
Yeah.
both of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fahri.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fahri, and I'm from Amasya University. I'm interested in this project because, in my opinion, social justice issues like gender inequalities or and other problems are the biggest obstacles for us to create the ideal world for future. And that's all for me.
Mm-hmm. Anything for us to remember you by?
You can remember me as the Fener boy.
Fener boy, okay. Good. And Damlanur.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Damlanur. I was born in Iskenderun, Hatay. I am a student in Amasya University. This is my 4th year. I grew up in Hatay, and my city is known for its multicultural and cosmopolitan structure, and I met different culture people from my childhood, and we are still living in them in equal conditions. And reasons for being interested in social justice, because I wonder this topic because my hometown, in my city, people do not discriminate other people about their religions, ethnics, prefers, or genders. We raise the words with respect, actually. Furthermore, we can see respect in every part of life, such as houses, shops, churches, mosques, and everywhere, actually. And especially, I want to work in the subject that gender equality in education, because I am a woman and I will always, my parents always encourage me, and I want to encourage other girls especially.
Mm-hmm. Anything that you want to say about yourself that we can remember you by?
I don't know. I'm just love playing tennis. Maybe you can remember by this.
Okay. Adnan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Adnan. I'm from Sinop University in the ELT department. I serve in the ELT department, and I currently work as the head of the department. So we have been working on this project. Indeed, this is the second volume of our project, and we have been working with Deniz quite well. And so that's it. And we have really great projects last year, and we hope to have the similar situation this year as well. And just keep in mind, if you just feel stuck at any point, we are here just to help out.
Anything for us to remember you by, Adnan?
Good.
Adnan has a daughter.
Can you say that again, Deniz?
Adnan has a daughter. I said, like, you know, anything for us to remember you by.
Yes, my little angel. Yes, it is Ada, and she's right now not here in Istanbul. So I guess this is the thing that you can remember me by. So my daughter, that's it.
Yeah.
How can I forget it?
And I, as I said, I'm Deniz, and yeah, we started this project last year with the initial funding from the embassy in Ankara, and I'm sure, like, you know, Adnan Hoca and Servet Hoca, they told you a lot about the process that we went through. But the symposium that we had at the end of the year was really good, especially the students' social responsibility projects that the embassy said, we want you to continue this project and, like, you know, expand the circle and educate more people. So this is why we are here today. And as for things to remember me by, I have a cat who lives in Turkey with my parents, but he's actually American. So he's a bilingual cat because I got him in the States when I was doing my PhD, and then I moved him to Turkey when I moved back to Turkey. And now that I moved back to the States, he is with my with my family. And I also have a husband who's British but who lives in Turkey. So I live here, he lives in Turkey. So my life is a bit scattered, but I am hoping it will come together eventually. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. So here's a poem by Warsan Shire. She is, I need to, I think, change my, okay, yes, that's what I want to do. She was born in Kenya. She's a London-based Somali British writer, and this is the end of her poem. She says, later that night, I held an atlas in my lap, ran my fingers across the world, and whispered, where does it hurt? It answered, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And we really like this poem, and we start with this poem in every like, you know, webinar, because I think it highlights all the problems that we have in the world, and also, like, you know, and also the universality of it. It's not like, you know, things happen in Turkey or in the States, but there's a problem everywhere. So we want to hear from you. What are the problems that we face in our world?
And when you speak, do not forget to unmute.
Racism?
Racism, yes. Can you say more?
Child marriage.
Okay, who said racism? Because I can't see the images. Let's hear more on racism, and then let's move on to Nazan.
Yes, disabled people, I think.
Disability. And Fahri, do you want to say more about racism?
I think racism is very clear. Should I add anything?
Okay, what else?
Child marriage.
Oh yeah, that's very good. What else?
Gender equality.
Gender equality or inequality?
Equality, of course.
Yeah. What else?
Child labor.
Child labor, yeah. Anything else?
Immigration.
Yeah, very good. Especially like, you know, as far as Turkey is concerned. How about environmental issues? Climate change?
Yeah, global warming.
Yeah. Global warming, yeah.
Animal rights.
Yeah, animal rights. They should have their own rights, right? Like if they occupy the world, yeah. What else? How about poverty?
Yeah, poverty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wars.
What did you say?
War.
Wars, yeah, exactly. Yeah, wars, immigration, yeah.
Can
So
I say something?
Yes, yes.
I do not know if it is true or not, but mobbing, can we say mobbing?
Yeah, mobbing is a type of bullying. So like, you know, but more mobbing takes place more at the workplace. But mobbing is also related to like, you know, gender inequality or like LGBTQ issues. So mobbing is more like the action that happens, but the roots of mobbing can be like disability, gender inequality, class, yeah. Yeah. So do you ever stop and think that like, you know, what we do on Earth is sustainable, that we can keep doing it over and over again? Do you think your kids or, you know, or cousins or relatives, the younger generation will be able to live under the conditions that we are living right now? Or maybe like, you know, think about how our parents lived in the past and how we are living and how our future generations will live. So this is related to sustainable development, and this is what I want to ask you next. Like, what is sustainable development? What does it mean? Have you ever heard the term? No? Okay. So we'll watch a very brief video here. Do you see the screen with the video?
Yes, we do.
I was doing something here. Share computer sound. Okay.
Hi guys! Do you have time for a few quick questions? I see you're having a lot of fun, but do you ever stop and think if what you do is sustainable? And do you know what sustainable development means? Sustainable development is to make the world a better place for everyone now without destroying the possibilities for the next generations. If you wonder if something is sustainable, you can ask yourself, can we do this over and over again forever? Sustainable development means that we need to keep three things in mind at once: social progress, economic development, and climate and environment. First of all, we have to take care of our planet. We have many natural ecosystems that must be in balance in order for us to live here. The climate system is one of them. This system ensures that the temperature is correct and that the atmosphere emits exactly the right amount of solar energy. When we emit harmful greenhouse gases such as CO2, we clog the atmosphere. This changes the temperatures on Earth, which again affects our development. How we produce and use energy is incredibly important. Oil and coal are examples of energy we may run out of. Water, wind, and sun, however, will always be here. Using the lasting sources of energy that renew themselves is good for the planet and can provide jobs for years to come. Economics. Almost everything we develop, buy, and trade starts with nature. the smarter we use our natural resources, and the better systems we create for a fair distribution, the more sustainable we are. One way to contribute to a more uneven distribution is to be more aware of what we buy and how it is produced. A football is a good example. It travels far before it reaches the football players. First, the materials are made. Then, they print the logo somewhere else before a third country sews it all together. One single football sees the whole world before it reaches its goal. This journey ties us together. If we are to win the battle for a sustainable future, we have to play with fair rules that applies to everyone. Social progress. We humans are part of nature, but we're also important resources for the world. Just like water, the forest, and the sun, we have minds that can create the strangest and most creative things. But for us to be the best versions of ourselves, there are certain things that must be in order, like having equal opportunities to education, safety, food, and medicine. This provides greater opportunities for us as human beings, but also for the planet. We just have to think in new ways. These three must work together. That is sustainable development. And there is actually a plan for this. All the countries of the United Nations have agreed on a joint plan for sustainable development. But for the plan to work, we need to cooperate, and we need you to be on board. Are you with us?
So what is sustainable development? Any thoughts?
Maybe don't be selfish, think other generations.
Yeah, that's very good. What else? If you need to explain sustainable development to a 5-year-old, what would you say?
Developing ourselves without destroying anything, like nature.
Developing ourselves or our society, our world without destroying the nature or the world. Nazan, you were going to say something?
Could you repeat the question?
If you need to explain what sustainable development means to a 5-year-old, what would you say?
5-year-old.
10-year-old. To a child.
Okay, child.
Maybe do something about the world, but don't destroy anything.
For me, can we say that a child is a bit egocentric? So can he or she think about this topic?
Well, that's a good question. And there is lots of evidence in terms of so that's one of the concerns of those who are not in favor of social justice education, that okay, children should be children, and we shouldn't talk about the problems of the world with children and why devastate them, and they won't understand, and etc. But there are lots of studies and comments on this issue. I'll give you just one very recent study that babies at the age of 6 months develop racial discrimination. 6 months that they can identify a Black person and a white person, and if they are a white baby, they have a preference towards the white people. So they can understand really well, because they absorbed anything, their brain works in ways that we don't even understand. So they really understand if you talk about sustainable development.
Experiment about it, I guess. So in the experiment, there are 6 or 5-year-old kids and they are shown two different dolls. One is black and one is white. So they prefer the white one, and they're asked, why do you prefer the white one? They say, because it's beautiful, clean, blah, blah. And then that's kind of, racism. And on TV, there is one more thing on Turkish channels. So the mother and the kid is in the kitchen, and the tap is open, so the water is running. And then the kid is looking at the tap, and then the mother looks at the tap, and then she kind of stops the water. So, you can just give such kind of messages to the kids.
Yeah, we need to actually start early if we really want change, because it's more difficult to work with adults and change their perceptions and positions. It's much more difficult. Okay. So what do you think the plan is? Like towards the end of the video says, oh yeah, like, we need to have sustainable development. We need to have progress, both social progress and economic progress, and like, progress about climate and environment. But we need to make sure that we play by the fair rules, like, because as it is right now, some rules apply to some people and some rules apply to some people. And that's not, like, think about all the implications of environmental issues, who gets hurt by hurricanes or rising sea levels. Like, some island states are sinking, and these people need to find a new land property to live as a whole country. What happens when, like, think about all the islands in, like, Oceania, where, like, like around Australia, Philippines, what happens when those islands sink? Like, where will these people go? So, like, we're talking about climate change and melting ice caps and etc., but, like, these have implications on real people, real individuals. So we need to play by fair rules, and we need to make sure that we protect the rights of every individual on Earth, but not just, like, our own benefits. So what do you think the plan is? Because they say towards the end of the video that we have a plan, we can stop this, or we can have sustainable development. Did you ever hear United Nations global goals?
No.
No? So we'll play another video here to show you the numbers that they want to achieve by, I can't remember, right, 2030, I think. But these are the goals. They have 17 goals: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work, economic growth, industry innovation, infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals. So these are 17 goals. And last year, one of our project participants actually focused on, I can't remember which goal exactly, but it was about probably
and economic growth.
Number 12 and maybe 15 or 13, right?
Are you talking about Aziz's project?
No, Rayan.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So Aziz also focused on the global goals?
Yes, he focused on decent work and economic growth.
Decent work and economic.
Quality.
So, yeah. So his project was about future jobs.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the 17 goals, and just to give you an idea, like, you can, in your social responsibility projects, you can actually select one of these goals and say, like, this is the goal that I'm working on, but not necessarily. But these are also ambitious goals, as I'll show you now.
wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see dollars. I wanna see pounds. Dollars. I wanna see pounds. I wanna see dollars. I wanna see pounds. Full circle like a merry-go-round. See numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see numbers in action. I wanna see.
So what do you think? Is this achievable? By 2030, no hunger?
Evaluating the numbers, yeah. It seems that they achieved something, yeah.
Yeah, there's some, like, you know, decrease, but like no hunger by 2030.
Yeah, it sounds good, but I don't think it's achievable.
Yeah, it's
Because,
a bit overambitious.
yeah, the population is growing faster than ever, and the big countries like America and Britain are not working to echo with that. Population is growing and others is decreasing.
Yeah, yeah. The biggest consumers in the world are China and the States, and yeah, and I don't know about China, but the States is not doing what it's supposed to. That's for sure. There are a couple of sources that we added here. So if you're interested, there are also lesson plans and materials if you want to cover the global goals. But I want to say two things. So I don't know if you noticed in the video that 193 countries, these are the UN countries that that agreed with the global goals. So like, including Turkey, we said yes, like, we'll help. I don't know what we are doing, but the two countries, there are 195 countries in the world. The two countries who didn't, who are not member states of the UN are the Holy See, Vatican, and the State of Palestine. So these are the two countries, not in the global goals. So our webinars are very much in line with the UN global goals. As you see, we'll talk about environmental education and environmental justice. We'll talk about gender equality. We'll talk about LGBTQ inclusive pedagogy, and we'll talk about peace building and immigration. So we have a lot of overlap between the UN's global goals and our webinars. Okay.
So I guess it's my turn, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about social justice, of course, and language teaching, then we have to connect these two concepts, and that means social justice curriculum. So do you mind just opening all the slides? Okay. So thinking of social justice curriculum, then we have to focus on lesson planning. So when we say lesson planning, we have to focus on the content and the classroom activities, also the materials that we bring to the classroom, and the evaluation process as well. I mean, that's evaluation and assessment, and also adaptation. So we have to consider all these components of teaching when we teach social justice for language teaching, or teach language for social justice. So in terms of lesson planning with particular focus on learning activities, there are some important questions that we have to bear in mind. So the first question is about the materials that we bring into the classroom. So the question is, what kind of authentic materials do I have access to that I bring that support the activity? So how can students learn from those materials? So we have to bring really authentic materials that can help students build awareness. So for example, if we're teaching about not kind of, you know, trashing plastic bags randomly, but kind of being responsible, then we can bring all these materials into the classroom. You know, they're authentic materials and help our students, like young learners, to understand what we're talking about. So the next question is about what modes of communication are students using in these activities? Is there a good variety? So when I say modes of communication, I'm basically referring to the interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational modes of communication. I'll talk about these three types in a minute. And the third question is, what components of culture are students examining in these activities? Is there a good variety again? So in terms of components of culture, we will talk about products, practices, and perspectives, and I'll talk about these three components in a minute as well. And the last question is, what models of classroom organization are used in the classroom activities? And also there is a good variety. So in terms of models of classroom organization, is it a whole class activity, individual, group, or pair work activity? Or do I just stick to one of these organizations and then ignore the rest? Or do I provide a good variety in terms of classroom organization? So, you know, as teachers, we have to be very aware, kind of aware of all these things when we go into the classroom and bring or implement our activities. So we need to kind of provide interaction among our students so that they can work together, either in groups or in as a whole class or in pairs, because at the end of the day, we expect them to learn from each other as well. So kind of these organizations help students to learn from each other because they come to the classroom with different luggages, with different funds, and obviously they will benefit from each other's knowledge. So in terms of modes of communication, as I said before, there are three modes. The first one is interpersonal. So interpersonal mode of communication is a two-way of communication. So the interlocutors interact with each other. And to give some examples, we can focus on engaging in conversations, providing and obtaining information, and expressing feelings and emotions and exchanging opinions. So in this kind of interaction, there are interlocutors and they interact and they convey information mutually. The next one is interpretive. So in interpretive communication, oftentimes the students interact with a text. It could be written or oral, and in this kind of interaction, students use the contextual cues to guess what is kind of tried to be expressed. They hypothesize and also confirm and revise those as they build meaning. So their interaction is oftentimes with the text, not with the interlocutors like human beings. And the last one is presentational. So like the interpretive mode of communication, this is one way of interaction again, or to some extent it could be two-way, but it's very limited. So in this mode of communication, there's oftentimes the presentation of information or concepts and ideas to an audience or of listeners or readers on a variety of topics. So I'll just imagine somebody at a conference, they give some kind of information about a particular topic. At times, they interact with the audience by asking some specific questions, but the interaction is kind of limited. And in terms of components of culture, there are three components. These are perspectives, practices, and products. So when I say perspectives, what I mean is the attitudes and values that people have about culture. So for example, the evolution of beliefs about homosexuality and marriage laws in the target language cultures. So, you know, homosexuality or LGBTQ issues, people have certain ideas about these issues in Turkey when compared to the States or to the European countries. So our attitudes and beliefs about such issues could be problematic. And when we bring all these issues into the classroom, our main or our ultimate purpose should be kind of providing a kind of social justice education in the classroom so that students can have better ideas about these kind of components of culture and build respect against towards other people. And practices oftentimes arise from how people interact. To give an example, language usage and its implication in specific contexts like schools and jobs. So for example, just at the beginning of the webinar, Nazan mentioned mobbing. So, you know, in mobbing, there's a lot of use, the use of language is a lot over there, like jobs, like academia, universities. It's a place very likely to kind of face mobbing. So in these interactions, the language that is used by some people can kind of be very intimidating for some people. So the language in these interactions could be analyzed as well, because they have certain kind of modes, cultural components that should be analyzed carefully. And the ways that that communities express themselves in the face of oppression. So that's very important, oppression. So, you know, like if you come from a society that has problems regarding some certain issues, then, and you go into a society that doesn't have these kind of problems, you are very likely to face some kind of oppression, or even within that that target community, you might be the one who is oppressed because of your ideas or beliefs or whatever cultural luggage you have. So the interaction in such situations are very likely to trigger some social injustice issues. And in terms of products, products oftentimes focus on access to and relationship with tangible and intangible resources. For example, the ways that laws on immigration shape decisions made by individuals. So for example, in Turkey, we have about 5 million refugees, and there are certain laws in Turkish legislation, and some of these laws allow the refugees, but some of them kind of prevent. And depending on these laws in the system, the stances that we as citizens of Turkish Republic have towards refugees is the product of the culture that we kind of live in. All right. Deniz, would you like to add something at this point?
Yeah. I'll continue with the activities, but what I want to say is that the modes of communication and components of culture, these are two issues, and authentic materials and the group work, you know, individual work, etc. So these are issues that we want you to pay close attention to when you design your lesson plans, because after this webinar, you will be designing your first lesson plan based on environmental education. So these are the things that, you know, we will expect to see in your lesson plans. So I'll move on to social justice activities, and I'll talk about three types of activities: problem posing activity, action oriented activity, and text analysis. And the reason that we're talking about these activities is that I'm sure like one of the concerns that you have in mind is when you start teaching, and I know like some of you are already doing part-time teaching, you have pacing, you have strict curriculum, you have a lesson plan that like somebody else designed, and you need to follow that. So how will you do all these things within this very strict curriculum? How will you address social justice issues? And I teach social justice language teaching at MIS as well to graduate students, and this is one of the things that we discuss oftentimes, like how do I go through the standards and also like, you know, pay attention to social justice issues. And my response is that you don't need to do anything, like you don't need to design new materials or bring in like new materials to your classrooms, change the curriculum, etc. You can work on the curriculum that you have. It's all about the questions that you ask in relation to that text, because social justice issues it's among us. It's not something that we bring from outside to the classroom. you have social justice issues in your classrooms. Think about the students that you have. Think about their poverty level. We have more and more like, you know, students from Syria or like, you know, or Iraq. We have like, you know, gay students and lesbian students. Even like, you know, you may know or you may not know. They might come out or they may not come out. But like, you know, these people are like in our classrooms. So are we going to ignore their rights, or are we going to do something about it? And as I said, we don't need to change the curriculum. We don't need to change the textbook. We can make like small adjustments in the activities or in the questions that we ask, and we can still, you know, address or bring these issues to language classrooms. So one type of activity is a problem-posing activity. So a problem-posing activity requires your learners to engage in discussion and critical inquiry and interactive participation. And this is really important because think about the questions that you ask in relation to a reading that they have done. You ask, I mean, like I taught English as well, and Adnan did as well. The textbooks lead you to ask questions that you know the answer to already. These are called pseudo questions. You are not interested in the answer. You are interested in if the student has the right vocabulary or the grammar to give you the response. But that's not why we read text, right? Like when we read something in Turkish, we talk about it in our own words or in our own, like we are supposed to like think critically about these issues. That's why we read things. We read things to learn and to understand the world, not to say something grammatically correct in Turkish. So, you know, problem posing activities have the same rationale or the idea behind it. Like, you know, are you asking critical questions and paying and like, you know, asking really genuine questions that will make your students to think about issues, or are you just asking for the sake of asking? So there are two types of questions that you can ask: transformative questions and essential questions. Transformative questions ask students to rewrite the text utilizing characters that speak to their personal experiences so as to promote alternative perspectives. So you are not asking a pseudo question, you are asking them, what would you have done differently if you were this character? Or how would you rewrite the end of the story? So they will think about the characters, they will think about the sequence of events and the ending and come up with a different story. So yeah, like one example is that in what ways could the story have been told differently and from whose perspective? So maybe like, you know, if your story has like 3 characters, ask them to add a 4th character and like, you know, and say, what do you think like, you know, this character would do in this story, or how would this character change the shape of the events? So ask transformative questions, ask them to think. Essential questions are actually like, sometimes we call these like thick questions. They invite students to consider subject matter from multiple, often conflicting viewpoints and do not have simple declarative answers. And one example here is that, how would life be different if we couldn't measure time? Think about it. This is not an easy question to answer. This is very difficult even for me or for yourself, but I need to think about this before answering, as opposed to how many minutes are there in an hour? Like, this is a very dumb question, right? Like, you know, our students are not stupid, but with the questions that we are asking, maybe we are giving the message that like, this is your intellectual level, like this is what your capacity is. But we need to, like, you know, we need to be pushing them, not limiting their potential. Another activity is an action-oriented activity, and as far as social justice language teaching is concerned, this is very important because we often talk about like social justice as a noun and social justice as a verb. So social justice as a noun means that we are working to raise their awareness, but social justice as a verb means that we are actually doing something towards achieving social justice. And this means like being an activist, but being an activist always has like, you know, negative connotations, especially like, you know, in the context of Turkey. Like, you know, it sounds like as if it's something bad and you need to go and do protests and other things. But like, you know, but the fact that like, you know, we are even doing something social justice related in the classrooms, it makes us an activist actually as teachers. So focus on change, because like if you only talk about racism and gender inequality and climate change and immigration, your students will be so depressed and they will feel devastated and they will feel helpless. And also like these problems are huge, and they will feel like, okay, why bother? Like, you know, what can I do about this? Like they will feel paralyzed, and you don't want that. You want to cultivate hope, and we want you to be hopeful as well. And that's why we encourage you to do your own social responsibility projects, but give that opportunity to your students as well. Give them the opportunity to do something towards social change. So ask them to encourage, like ask them to, or get them like encouraged to examine and reform social situations, but also like, you know, encourage their active citizenship. And you can do like very small assignments or tasks to do so. So for instance, like, you know, the class writes a letter to the principal to demonstrate support for anti-bullying in schools, right? This is something that everybody will support, and your principal will be proud, and the parents will be proud as well. So you can win everybody. Or, you know, or write a letter to the local government about recycling, right? Like, or do a campaign with your students to encourage recycling or composting in your local environment. So there are things that you can do without, you know, getting into too much trouble, let's say. And the last type of activity is a text analysis activity, and this is based on critical literacy. And critical literacy refers to the critical analysis of text. That means like whenever we read something, are you asking the right kind of questions? Who is represented here? Who is the victim here? Or who is represented as the victim or the victimizer? What's happening here? What's the real source of the problem that we see in relation to this text? Because we will do lots of text analysis activity, and Adnan will show you a few in a little bit, but we'll do more in relation to gender and LGBTQ issues as well. Like, but think about your textbooks. Like, are they representing real life? Sometimes. To me, they represent Disney World, because it's like everybody is so happy, and there are some textbooks that touch on like climate change and environmental issues and etc. But other than that, it's everybody's so happy, and we read about the royal family, and because that's, you know, one of the things that we are interested in. And but like, you know, so you can work with your textbook, but you can ask really good questions. So in a text analysis activity, readers are encouraged to examine all text for messages related to power, privilege, social inequality, because these issues like social, cultural, and historical factors influence the writer's position. Textbook writers have a position that they are imposing on us, and we're just consuming it, and we shouldn't. Adnan, back to you.
So we're going to do a whole group discussion about textbook analysis. So there are two questions that I'd like you to kind of answer all together. So the first question, what are some common themes that occur in all English language textbooks? And next one is, what are other social justice issues that you would relate to these common themes? So let's imagine you're teaching, and I guess in the third or fourth year, you have this coursebook analysis course, right? So you went through different textbooks and you did some analysis. I'm sure you had a look at the contents page of the book. So regarding this content page, what themes exist?
May I start?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, I am primarily interested in young learners from 2nd to 5. In their books, most of the time I see, for example, the topics greeting, numbers, colors, and body parts, animals,
Nationalities.
yes, and most of the time they are based on memorization, not something related to environment. We just show the vocabularies and do some activities and make them memorize. It seems like that on the books. From and sometimes we can say that town, city parts, for example, restaurants,
Directions,
yeah,
actually.
Directions, and something they are primarily based on memorization, not just meaningful learning.
Okay.
That's from 2nd to 5.
All right, thank you. Deniz, would you like to say something?
Yeah, so I want to ask Nazan, so how would you integrate social justice issues into those topics that you described?
A good question. Actually, until now, until this project, I couldn't deeply think of it because most of the time in the schools I work, they just want me to teach the things in the book and not just anything else. So I couldn't actually have the chance to deeply relate the topics to the social issues. Yeah.
And I want to add something. Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Last week, we examined 8th grade books, and I remember the topic of friendship.
Okay.
So friendship is very related with the social justice. If we choose, I want to choose the immigration. Maybe we can focus on the friendship.
Yeah.
Okay, because we have a lot, you mean like we have Syrian students or Iraqi students or Afghan students in our class.
Yes.
Building kind of this relationship between the Turks and these immigrants is kind of important.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. All right, anybody else?
Well, may I add something?
Yeah, of course.
Well, first of all, I'd like to take a topic into consideration. Like we have a topic in ingredients in our textbooks. So we are trying to teach some verbs like smash the potatoes, boil the water. And at the end of the class, as an activity, we want students to watch a video.
Okay.
Like messages, the woman is cooking. So I'd like to change it. So it's like my project. Like a man is cooking. So make the gender equals. So we will prepare a video that a man is cooking. So the hidden message is the equality in genders. So we can reach those. So that's all.
Any more comments on the questions?
Can I add something?
Go ahead, Burak.
We know that there are a lot of chances to communicate with other people and different cultures in the digital environment. So we can focus on digital improvement, because if we direct our student to use computer or to use chat with other people from different culture, from different countries, we can do something about social justice. So we can use computer and internet connection in our lessons. So they can chat or they can watch some videos, they can use forums, blogs, etc. So it will be effective, I think.
Especially in terms of building cultural awareness.
Yep.
Right? Any more comments?
Yes. For example, in the 4th grade, I taught a topic which is about nationality, countries and nationalities. And in these countries, in the curriculum, there were 8 countries, as far as I know, but I taught them approximately 15 countries, and among them I included some countries, for example, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, to teach, to maybe raise awareness in terms of, to raise social awareness. Maybe we can say that.
Actually, can I add something?
Go ahead.
Actually, as far as I remember, in 7th grade curriculum, there is a unit called democracy. Actually, it's about choosing a class president more, but when we look at general flame, it's about democracy.
Class president, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So kind of giving this subliminal message of democracy in the classroom, got it. So very from classroom to the whole country then, kind of, got it. All right. So any more comments, or should we just go on?
Can I add something?
Go ahead, please.
Oh, I have just analyzed the 11th grade textbook, and in this book there were topics like future jobs and hobbies. And in these topics, all of the ideal figures are men. Like in future jobs, there were Elon Musk, and in the hobbies, there was footballers and men like Ronaldo, or if I'm not wrong, Michael Jordan. There were no woman figure. Mostly they focused on the men.
Right. Okay. So just below the questions, there are 3 pages from 3 different books, I guess. So in the first one, the aim is to teach jobs. And when you look at the list of the the names of the jobs, they're very common, very canonical jobs. But you know, there are some jobs, these are not kind of covered in the course books. And also when you look at the visual representations of the jobs and the names, well, when you analyze the visual representations through a critical literacy perspective, you see that oftentimes women are represented as weak and men are represented as strong. So, and also racism exists in these books as well. So oftentimes the cleaner is a woman or a colored person, but not a white one. So you see, what I mean here is that if you look at the issue, analyze the textbooks through a critical lens, you will see a lot of social injustice in the both language and also the visual representations covered in the book as well. So, so some of the common themes that are covered in textbooks are school, house, clothing, health, travel, city, education and work, and relationships and environment. So these are, when you look at the contents page of the books, you will see these kind of common topics in the course books. But the question is that, how do you think you can integrate environmental education into these themes? So take the school, all right? So let's imagine we're focusing on Unit 1 and we're going to focus on school, and our purpose is to bring environmental issues while teaching the vocabulary or grammar in the unit about school. So what can we do? Or let's imagine we're focusing on travel, and then how are we going to relate travel or that particular unit to teaching social justice with particular focus on environmental education, environmental social justice. So Denise, can we just move on to the next slide? So some examples are here. For example, if you're teaching transportation, you can then focus on carbon emissions or car-free cities. You know, sometimes there are some cities, and in some of these streets in these cities, the use of cars are banned because they cause a lot of problems. Or you can just bring in some different pictures of some cities from different countries in which air pollution is kind of a big issue over there, and then you can give the message that we need to be very careful when we use our cities, when we use the environment, or when we share this environment with other creatures. In terms of, for example, if we're focusing on marketing, so you can focus on greenwashing or label reading. So some of these topics can all include issues about environmental education with particular reference to social justice. So it's very possible. What is important is that you have a critical lens or awareness about that and how to build that connection between the content that is the topics on the left and then environmental perspective or angle and merge them in your classroom. And that's the very important point. And one of the objectives of that webinar or that project is to help you kind of come to that conclusion.
I want to ask everyone if they know what greenwashing means.
Yeah, I was about to ask the same question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Greenwash.
So greenwashing is that if you go to a supermarket now, especially like in the States, everything is organic or everything is grass-fed, but it doesn't mean anything. Like because these companies are making everything eco-friendly now to be more marketable, but like, you know, organic doesn't really mean organic, or like, you know, or everything has a, like, look at the packaging of products, it's green or blue because we are environmentally friendly, but it doesn't mean that. Yeah, so that's greenwashing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another concept related to, not related to greenwashing, but very similar to greenwashing is whitewashing. Do you know what whitewashing is? So going back to this, for instance, the image here, the first one, like, you know, showing white people doing the you know, the good jobs, or like, you know, representing white people more in the curriculum or in the textbook. That's whitewashing. Okay. So why do you think why do you think environmental education is a social justice endeavor? Like, why are we talking about environmental education in this project?
Yes, and especially in relation to social justice, because oftentimes it's a little difficult for people to build the connection between environmental education and social justice. Because when we say social justice, what comes to mind is oftentimes racism, gender equality. But when we talk about environmental education, some people just like, you know, they give a pause and then, well, could it be related? How? That's our question.
No?
Okay, can I talk?
Yeah.
Let's think that we solve the racism problem or other community problems like skin racism or religion. But let's think that there is no clean environment to live. Air pollution or light pollution. How can we live without the clean nature if we solve other problems?
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
I think that people should firstly respect environment, then should respect each other. If someone doesn't respect the environment, he or she cannot respect the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nazan, you were going to say something?
If I forget. Okay, so I think in every way we are responsible for the environment in which we are living, and yes, environmental education is one of them. Before starting with the relationships among people, as Burak said, we should make an environment which gives we should create an environment in which we are living healthily, because environment is something which affects us in every way. I mean, environment affects us physically, socially, psychologically, emotionally, mentally. So we are responsible, actually, because of that.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll ask another question. Why do you think we have racism or immigration or wars? What is the basic reason behind all the problems actually that we have on Earth? Burak, you're gonna say something or not?
Yes. Actually, firstly, I think that the main problem is about family education, and also culture, our culture, because there is an environment like a multicultural environment in Turkey. So people or children never see different people, different colors, different religions. So they never learn respect each other. And also in our culture, it's bad, but I should say, men always in a good situation, always they are in a good situation. It's also a problem in our culture. Also, I think that the first education about social justice should start in family.
Yeah, that's a good point. But what I was trying to get at is that when you think about the origins of racism, how the term race was coined, or immigration, or any kind of war, it's because of a fight over resources, like people being greedy and taking other people's land for prosperity, right? It's the source of most of the problems that we have is a resource related problem, some people taking the resources from the other people, right? So any kind of social justice issue is actually an environmental issue, and water and food are the most important resources that we need to survive. So if we continue like this, we're not going to have water that we can drink, or we're not going to have food that we can eat. We are already, think about the food that you used to eat as a child, and now we are eating nothing tastes like, tomatoes taste like crap. Cucumbers are not tasting like cucumbers anymore. We have them, but they they are anyways genetically engineered. But then maybe in 20-30 years we won't have, and then we'll be fighting over potatoes and onions and maybe rice. Think about the implications of environmental issues. And also a product that we need to talk about in relation to environmental education is plastic. We know plastic is evil for health reasons, consuming plastic, but plastic is also evil in terms of the effect that it has on the environment. So Van Jones talks about the economic injustice of plastic and explains it really well, how environmental issues are related to social justice issues. This is a longer video. We'll only watch the first 5-6 minutes of it.
I am honored to be here, and I'm honored to talk about this topic, which I think is of grave importance. We've been talking a lot about the horrific impacts of plastic on the planet and on other species, but plastic hurts people too, especially poor people. And both in the production of plastic, the use of plastic, and the disposal of plastic, the people who have the bullseye on their foreheads are poor people. people got very upset when the BP oil spill happened for very good reason. People thought about, oh my God, this is terrible. This oil, it's in the water. It's going to destroy the living systems there. People are going to be hurt. This is a terrible thing that this oil is going to hurt the people in the Gulf. What people don't think about is, what if the oil had made it safely to shore? What if the oil had actually got where it was trying to go? Not only would it have been burned in engines and added to global warming, but there's a place called Cancer Alley. And the reason it's called Cancer Alley is because the petrochemical industry takes that oil and turns it into plastic, and in the process kills people. It shortens the lives of the people who live there in the Gulf. So oil and petrochemicals are not just a problem when there's a spill, there's a problem when there's not. And what we don't often appreciate is the price that poor people pay for us to have these disposable products. The other thing we often don't appreciate is it's not just at the point of production that poor people suffer. Poor people also suffer at the point of use. Those of us who are in a certain income level, we have something called choice. The reason you want to work hard and have a job and not be poor and broke is so you can have choices, economic choices. We actually get a chance to choose not to use products that have dangerous, poisonous plastic in them. Other people who are poor don't have those choices. So low-income people often are the ones who are buying the products that have those dangerous chemicals in them, that their children are using. Those are the people who wind up actually ingesting a disproportionate amount of this poisonous plastic and using it. People say, well, they should just, buy a different product. Well, the problem with being poor is you don't have those choices. You often have to buy the cheapest products. The cheapest products are often the most dangerous. And if that weren't bad enough, if it wasn't just the production of plastic that's giving people cancer in places like Cancer Alley and shortening lives, and hurting poor kids at the point of use, at the point of disposal, once again, it's poor people who bear the burden. Often, we think we're doing a good thing. You're in your office, and you're drinking your bottled water or whatever it is, and you think to yourself, hey, I'm going to throw this away. No, I'm going to be virtuous. I'm going to put it in the blue bin. He's like, I put mine in the blue bin. And then and then you look at your colleague, you say, oh, you cretin, you put yours in the white bin. And, we have this moral tickle, we feel so good about ourselves. But if we, okay, I'm speaking for myself, not you, but I feel this way often. And, so we kind of have this kind of moral feel-good moment. But if we were to be able to follow that little bottle on its journey, we would be shocked to discover that all too often that bottle is going to be put on a boat. It's going to go all the way across the ocean at some expense, and it's going to wind up in a developing country, often China. I think in our minds we imagine somebody's going to take the little bottle and say, oh, little bottle, we're so happy to see you, little bottle. You've served so well, You get a little bottle massage, a little bottle medal, and say, well, what would you like to do next? And the little bottle says, I just don't know. But that's not actually what happens. That bottle winds up getting burned. Recycling of plastic in many developing countries means the incineration of the plastic, the burning of the plastic, which releases incredible toxic chemicals and once again kills people. And so poor people who are making these products in petrochemical centers like Cancer Alley, poor people who are consuming these products disproportionately, and then poor people who even at the tail end of the recycling are having their lives shortened, are all being harmed greatly by this addiction that we have to disposability. Now you think to yourself, because I know how you are, you say, that sure is terrible for those poor people. It's like, it's just awful, those poor people. I hope someone does something to help them. But what we don't understand is, here we are in Los Angeles. We've worked very hard to get the smog reduction happening here in Los Angeles. But guess what? Because they're doing so much dirty production in Asia now, because the environmental laws don't protect the people in Asia now, almost all of the clean air gains and the toxic air gains that we've achieved here in California have been wiped out by dirty air coming over from Asia. Okay? So we all are being hit. We all are being impacted. It's just the poor people get it first and worst. But the dirty production, the burning of toxins, the lack of environmental standards in Asia is actually creating so much dirty air pollution. It's coming across the ocean and has erased our gains here in California. We're back where we were in the 1970s. And so we're on one planet, and we have to be able to get to the root of these problems. Well, the root of this problem
So I think he does a really good job explaining the connection between environmental issues and and who's affected by environmental issues. He talks about poor people in the States in relation to environmental education and environmental justice. The discussion goes around poverty and racism, because it turns out Black people and poor people, people living under poverty levels, are influenced the most by environmental disasters and pollution and etc. What he says towards the end is very important. We live on one planet, so it's not oh, the ice caps are melting and the animals are extincting and etc. etc. And we don't have polar bears in Turkey, so why should we care? But we live on the same planet, so and everything is connected to each other. We talk about an ecosystem here that's really complicated, but also very interconnected. So what happens on one side of the world, think about the example that he gave, because of the burning of the plastic in Asia, all that air pollution comes back to Los Angeles and wipes out their clean air gain. So why should we do something very small here and not care about the other things that are happening in the world? We have to. That's why we start our webinars with environmental issues, because this is something that's important for all of us and unites all of us regardless of our differences, and we should be very passionate about environmental issues. One concept that we need to talk about in relation to environmental education, and that connects environmental education to social justice issues, is environmental justice. And this is relatively a newer concept in the field, and it refers to the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulation, and policies. So this is really important, because when we talk about environmental issues, we need to think about who's making the laws, who's making the decisions about environment, who decides if the trees get cut or not, and whose voice is heard, who's saying no or yes to this. So several questions: who's making the laws? Who's speaking to the mic? In the States, only white people speak to the mic when it comes to environmental laws and policies. So that's why environmental issues are a big problem against Black people. Who are they protecting? Mostly their own budgets. Whose voice is included? Who's silenced? Who's facing these environmental hazards and challenges? Who's left from decision-making processes? Who receives the most help when something happens? For instance, in California, we have a lot of wildfires because of the dry season. So I'm sure you heard it on the news. When a wildfire happens in LA, you know what happens? All those celebrities, they have their own firefighters. They hire their own private firefighters so that they can protect their houses. But what happens to those poor people who don't get any help? So, it is a very social justice issue in that sense. So our question is, how does a teacher get students to think critically about environmental events and help them become agents of social change? So this is not a question that we're asking to elicit a response right now, but it's more like a question that you should keep in mind. How can I encourage my students to become a climate activist? And this is not very difficult. Do you know her? Yeah, Kadir?
Yeah, I know her.
Who is she?
She was the one who spoke against the top level ones, that they're destroying our planet by changing the global environmental situations.
Yeah, so her name is Greta, I forgot her last name, Thunberg? No, Thunberg. Greta Thunberg from Sweden, and she was 16 when she had her first climate strike, and she was on her own. This is probably a year ago. She stopped eating, she stopped drinking, she stopped going to school. She was so depressed about the climate change that she's like, I'm not going to go to school, I'm going to protest. So she was on her own. And this is from this year. She organized climate strikes all over the world. And she came to the States to speak at the UN's Climate Action Summit, where all the world leaders also spoke. And I'll play the video as well. But she didn't fly to the States. She took a boat, or a ship, like a sea journey for a month, because she didn't want to contribute to carbon emissions. So she only takes the train, or she travels by boat. So she is a very young climate activist. She's very popular. She's a bit criticized in the States because there are lots of indigenous young climate activists who haven't been on TV as much as Greta. Greta is a white privileged teenager, so the media actually supports her a lot. But she was nominated as a candidate for 2019 Nobel Peace Prize as well. So let's watch her very brief message at the UN's climate summit. And this is from September 2019.
Greta, your first climate strike was a lonely event a little over a year ago. And in the intervening time, you have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe, demanding action for climate change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. To have a 67% chance of staying below a 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, the best odds given by the IPCC, the world had 420 gigatons of CO2 left to emit back on January 1st, 2018. Today that figure is already down to less than 350 gigatons. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years. There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us, but the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not. Thank you.
So I think she gives a very good message, and also this is like, if you want to integrate or bring these issues into your language classrooms, this is like, I think that her video is amazing to show to your students, but also like the message is that this is about themselves and this is about their life, and if they don't do anything about it, they will be the ones like suffering from the consequences.
And also,
any questions so far?
Actually, I have.
Yeah.
Okay. So we said previously that we should have a critical eye in preparing our lesson plans to make the students aware of the social or social environment in which we are living. Do we also need, as teachers, to be educated or to take education, to get educated about this issue in our university courses? Because, in Turkey, most of the time, we are just educated on how to teach English effectively, what are the methods and techniques to teach English effectively, but nothing much about the environment in that we are living.
Adnan, do you want to go or should I go?
If you would like to just answer the question, just go ahead. Or I'll continue with the presentation and then we'll also answer the question as well.
Yeah, so Adnan will talk about this in a little bit, but I'll maybe answer like very briefly if I can. That's a very good point, because like it's not only English language teaching, but I think all teachers need like training on social justice issues, and it's happening in the States. There are even like doctoral programs on social justice education. So and to be certified as a teacher, you need to have like certain hours of training on diversity. So of course, like you need to, as you get interested in these topics, It can be environmental education. It can be, so what our goal in these webinars is to familiarize you about these issues as well. So we talked about like greenwashing, carbon emissions, and etc. And we provide lots of resources for you to self-study. We can only cover to a certain extent. Like if you are really invested in this, you need to look at the resources that we posted and like, you know, and like, oh, like what is carbon emission? What is greenwashing? How can I talk about this? So like, you know, you need to do a bit self-study, but like, you're right that it's our responsibility as teacher educators to also like, you know, to talk about this, but what we don't, like we, like even think about my own education as a teacher when I was in your shoes. We only had one young learners course. We never talked about students with disabilities or special education. We never talked about diversity. We assumed that everybody in the classroom will be Turkish and at the same proficiency level, same poverty level, or like, you know, class level, etc. Our teacher education programs are problematic in that sense that we are not focusing on the learners. We are focusing on the content. Like, you know, English is our goal, but not really how do I, you know, address the needs of the learners, right? Yeah.
Indeed, in the curriculum, currently we don't have any courses related to teaching these particular issues. And I believe sometime in future, we will most probably have, because right now we have the ELT program activated in Sinop University. And in the following years, our students will have elective courses. And we're planning to kind of launch a new course and offer it to the Council of Higher Education. And the name of the course will most probably be Teaching Language for Social Justice. Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of, right now, the Council of Higher Education has nothing about that, but as departments, we can do something about that because we have the option to offer elective courses to the council and they accept it. So departments can do that, I believe, because we are planning right now. So to go on with the presentations, of course, we have some suggestions for teachers. So as teachers, we should highlight the connections between environmental issues and students' everyday actions. For example, every morning, most probably the majority of the students brush their teeth and then come to the classroom. So we can just bring that issue into the classroom. So we can focus on the time spent on brushing the teeth and also the amount of water used to brush the teeth. So, you know, this is very simple, but it seems very simple but minor. If we raise this kind of awareness in our students, believe me, at the end of the day, we'll somehow save some amount of water at home that will contribute to the home, the budget of the home, and also to the whole country and then to the whole world. Also, we can give students some freedom to select the content of their courses. So at the beginning, I know, well, the Minister of Education imposes certain curriculum and certain materials on teachers to deliver and to teach or to use in the classroom. But I believe that because I'm teaching this year, I'm teaching in the prep class. Well, of course, our curriculum is not as strict as yours or as the teachers in the in they serve now, but still you can provide some room for your students to raise their voice in terms of education, environmental education. So you can just ask them, well, next week or in this semester, we're going to have this course. And then I'd like to hear if you have any problems around you related to environmental education and that you want to be covered in this course. And then you can just take some notes. And then when you go home, well, you have a certain book, but you can still embed these topics into your course book. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about the themes covered in the course books, but also how we can relate these themes to social environmental education. I believe as teachers, we can do that. And well, with this project, I believe you will feel more stronger when you go into the field because you will have the chance to integrate these things into your classrooms. Oftentimes we can embed environmental issues into lessons seamlessly. That doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that we have to spare one unit or 2 or 3 weeks to environmental education, but that can be kind of implemented into the teaching process throughout the year. It just depends on how you do it. How you implement in your classrooms. So, for example, a textbook reading profiling the offering ads McDonald's in different countries could be supplemented with information on the environmental costs. For example, deforestation, water consumption, pollution. So we can just focus, a McDonald's exists almost in every part of the world. So we can just bring a text, we can bring a listening, an audio into our classroom, and we can just deliver that message through this particular audio or text. It depends on how you kind of design your course. That's most of the time in your hand. So for the suggestions, sometimes we might feel that indeed this relates to Nazan's question as well. Well, we lack the knowledge to teach about environmental justice. So how, as a teacher, as a prospective teacher, I'm going to kind of implement these topics in my classroom. So some tips are, you can cover content we cover content outside of our classroom. For example, when we're teaching adjective clauses, we bring different topics, different content in terms of content. We bring different things into our classroom. It could be about science, art, or history, and then we deliver that particular grammatical point. But instead of art or science, we can also bring issues or audios or reading texts about environmental issues and still teach adjective clauses. Well, the ultimate purpose is, of course, to teach the language, but also, on the other hand, at the same time, we can teach how to be responsible for the world that we share with other creatures. And also, we have to keep in mind that we're not responsible for providing all the answers, because we're not experts in environmental education. So we might have some problems. Our knowledge might be lacking at some point, but obviously just say, well, that's what I know. Let's go and search for it all together and bring the answers to the classroom. So I think kind of acknowledging that my knowledge of that particular area is kind of limited, that's a virtue. So let's go and do it together. That's another virtue. So you kind of give the power to your class, to your students, that we can do that together because we share this world together.
Mm-hmm. I do it all the time, and it's not just about social justice. They ask, what is the difference between stance and positionality? And they sound very similar. Okay, let me go study this. I'll find out and I'll get back to you next week. And and when you actually do that, the students love it, because you're not trying to be seen like somebody who has the answers or who is the authority. You need to remember that you are human beings and you don't need to know everything. Right. So be vulnerable.
Exactly, and that's a virtue indeed. And we can design language learning activities for meaning co-construction. That's very important, and engagement in research. Meaning co-construction is very important. That means, so we're not the sole or single power in the classroom to construct meaning for our students, but we can also, with our students, co-construct the meaning. So for example, there's an issue about environmental issue that we're not familiar with, or our students are not familiar with. We can go, we can Google it, and then we can bring the information into the classroom, and then with our students, we can co-construct the meaning for this particular issue in our classroom. It doesn't mean that you are giving power, you're losing the power in the classroom, or you are losing the management of the classroom, but rather you're giving some voice and space to your students, and you are empowering your students. As I said, just acknowledge the limits of your own knowledge, because learning is lifelong. So indeed, that giving this particular message to our students is also very important. So, well, there's a lot of information out there, and I have just some of it, or my knowledge of the world is limited, let's go and just discover it for ourselves. And let us help each other just build that particular, or co-construct that meaning for each other. All right, and we should also accept environmental issues as the concern of everyone, but not merely as the duty of experts to solve. That's very important. So sometimes we might have people, well, they might say that, well, yeah, I live in this world, but I'm just an English language teacher. So just, you know, bringing solutions to these problems is not my duty. There are people who are paid and they should go and solve it. Well, we are, as people living or sharing this world, we cause this problem. So we have the share in this particular responsibility. So we should we should be responsible for our own role, and we should kind of act accordingly. So we cannot just let or just stay and wait other people to solve the problems for us that we're indeed causing. So we're going to watch a brief video. It's not very long. So while watching the video, please be very careful what is happening in the video. And then we're going to, I'm going to kind of create breakouts, that's group works. And then we're going to have discussions, and we're going to come up with some activities around the video. So as prospective teachers, how we can implement this video in our classrooms and teach one particular language point, and also give some message to our students about environmental education. So please, perspective to the video. So in a minute, in a few seconds, I'm going to create a breakouts. So that means you are going to be in different groups and just come up with the activity. But it is important that you have somehow some language point to deliver by using this video. So it could be teaching nouns, it could be teaching verbs. I mean, it's up to you, but also it's a little important, not a little, it's very important to determine the level of the students as well. So, well, we have this activity. This activity could be used in young learners or 8th grade students, 12th grade students. If you just provide this, I'm very happy. So, Denise, I'm creating the breakouts.
Let's see, do you have any questions before we begin? No? Okay, good.
Okay. So Denise, I'm going to create 3 groups, right? But that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, God, all of a sudden I was done. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Actually, we don't know.
We don't know too.
All right. So somebody kicked me out.
Yeah.
All right. So you know, you watched the video, and now it's time to have a little discussion and then come up with the activities. So, you know, what can we do around this brief video?
Actually, we are talking. Yeah.
We are talking about.
All right.
Okay. So we discussed that we can show students 2 types of pictures.
Different types of undersea pictures.
Yes. One of them is dirty, and the other one is clean And then one of them is, of course, clean one is happy, unclean or dirty one is unhappy, sad. We can ask, first of all, as brainstorm questions, why one of them is happy and the other one is unhappy. Please discuss the reasons. This lesson may be focused on comparatives. And then we ask the reasons, we compare the C's, and then we ask the students, in which under C would you like to live? And then, of course, they will most probably say clean one. Happy. Yes, happy one.
Okay.
So we also ask them to find suggestions for the unclean under C. And what should we do to make the dirty under C happy?
Okay.
And then at the end, we should, of course, by the suggestions of the students, make the unhappy C, under C happy.
Okay.
Am I clear?
Of course you are. And that's a very effective activity because, you know, you have the language point, that's comparatives and superlatives, but also teaching, I mean, this environmental education awareness. That's very strong. Okay, I'm just going to leave the room and then have a visit to the other rooms. And then if they're finished, I'm going to end up the breakout.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Aynen bunun şeyi gibi. Dakika 2 ile kaç arası? Dakika 3 arası olsun. İkisine birer dakika olsun.
Speaking Turkish.
Kısa kısa gidelim. Bak basıl.
So what is your activity?
So we thought that we selected another video. We are gonna, can you see another video link in the chat?
Well,
just sent by Fahri.
Just a minute, I can't. So where is that chat? Okay. That was by, no, I can't. Yes, I can see it. Okay.
So we are gonna make the students watch the video. Let me see the exact times. It was like a 1 minute of the video.
Yes.
So it shows the fishes in the ocean. So we start a writing activity. So they'll write the introduction part with that video. And then we showed another video that you showed us. And then they're gonna go on with the conclusion and the main part, body part.
Okay.
So it's a writing activity.
Right. So I'm going to visit Dennis' group and then to see if they're finished or not. And then we'll most probably end the breakout in a minute, okay?
Okay.
It's about the pollution.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm here.
Okay.
The other groups are almost done. And what about you?
Almost. I want to see what Selçuk thinks about this plan.
Okay.
Can I take the question? I didn't hear.
What do you think about the activity, the drama activity that they proposed?
It should be effective, but we can use authentic materials, like you said, like how can I say? We can use authentic materials about the water pollution, like an aquarium, and it should be more effective than drama, maybe.
Can we combine drama with authentic materials?
Yes. It should be possible. Yeah, right.
Okay, I took notes because when we go back to the larger group, you will talk about your activity. So I'll send the notes to who wants to report this back to the group.
I should go back to the other groups and tell them they should choose a speaker. Kadir and can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So when we go to the main room, it would be better if you choose somebody, one of you, as the speaker to report back to the whole class to the main room.
Fahri may be the speaker, if it's okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to tell the other group as well, and then end the breakout.
Okay.
Hey, I'm back.
Yes.
So in a few seconds, we will be in the main room. So when we go back to the main room, it will be better if you choose somebody as the speaker to report back to the whole group.
Okay, so who should be?
You can. Nazan.
Okay, yeah, I can.
All right. So I'm just going to ask Denise if they are done or not, so that we can just continue with the rest. Okay.
Okay.
Could you repeat, by the way?
I'm just going to visit Denise's room is to see if they are done or not.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, they're already gone. Okay.
Okay. Return to main session.
Okay, everybody's in the main room. So now it's time for us. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So we're going to report back to the whole group about the activity that we designed. So who would like to go first?
Can we start?
Nazan, go ahead, please.
Okay. So our activity is about, first of all, 2 pictures. One of them is clean, and one of them is in the video, dirty, unclean. We use some open material to show these two situations. Of course, dirty is the undersea is unhappy, the clean one is happy. We ask the students to compare these two pictures by using comparatives and superlatives. They just compare them, and then we ask the reason why one of them is unhappy and the other one is happy. Of course, they will have an answer, I think. And then I forget.
We had authentic materials also.
We asked the students, in which one would you like to live? Of course, they say in the clean one. But we said, what about the dirty one? They, of course, give us some suggestions to make it more cleaner. And then after we are making the bottom of the sea cleaner, we reaching happy end, and we make happy emotions for the two underseas. Am I clear?
Sure. Yeah. All right, thanks. Okay. So the next group, Kadir and Fahri.
Okay. Our main activity is writing an essay to the students, and the level of the students is 11th grade. Firstly, we have 2 videos. One's that you showed us, and we have one more. I will send the link. Firstly, we will show this video like 2 minutes, and then one student to write the introduction part of essay, and then we show the second video that you showed us, and one from students to what can cause this pollution, what can happen to see that pollution in the water. According to this question, one from students to write the body part and the conclusion.
All right, so basically it's a writing activity
yes.
based on both videos.
Yes.
Right. Okay, and our last group.
I think that we will prepare a lesson plan for young learners, maybe 5th or 6th grade. We will organize a drama role play, and we will integrate some authentic materials to our lesson plan, our role play. In our role play, main subject will be about life under the sea. Children will be fishes, and they will try to live in a pollution water pollution, and they will try to solve their problems. They will talk about people. That's all.
Wow, that's really great. So drama and acting out.
Yes.
Young learners. So thank you. Denise, so I guess we're done. Can you hear me? So we're done with the breakout session and the activities designed around the video. So can you just monitor the full screen of the presentation? Denise, can you hear me? Denise, you are unmuted. You are muted, sorry, not unmute.
But I shared the screen. You don't see it?
No, we can't see it.
Let's do it again. How about now?
Nope.
I need to.
Yes. We can see your screen.
No?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
So great. Thank you for all the activities. They're really great and perfect. So as you know, when we came for the introductory seminars to your universities, we talked that we will have, at the end of each webinar, we will have a block task and also a lesson plan. So this is our block task activity. So we're going to examine the textbook that is used in our practicums class, or if you are teaching, the textbook that you use in your classrooms, and then write down some of its features, such as chapter sections, activities, supplemental materials that you feel particularly support social justice education, particularly in relation to, but not limited to, environmental education and environmental justice. So our primary focus will be environmental education, but of course, it doesn't mean that you have to stick to this kind of issue. If you observe any other issues related to social injustice, you are welcome to write them down as well. You can write down features that you think would be more difficult to adapt to support social justice education. You know, sometimes when you go through the textbook, you might say, well, this is possible to be adapted to social justice education, but this particular topic is kind of difficult, or is rather difficult to adopt it and use it to deliver some messages about social justice. So just kind of make a list of these activities and explain why you think it's kind of difficult to adopt these activities. So your blogs, you know, we have a website of our project. It's called www.socialjusticeinalt. Thank you, Denise. So your blogs are here under the stories. Blog pages. So if you click, you will see the blog pages from our previous participants, and your blogs will be created very soon. If you send your bio and also your information, your picture, your photo to Yasharjan, and they're all almost ready. We're just waiting for your bios and also profile pictures, and then it will be ready in just 1 or 2 days. And then you will be sent. Denise, would you like to say something?
I want to ask, like, if everyone has sent it already, or there are other, like, you know, or
we are about to send.
Okay, yeah.
So once your blogs are ready, you're going to send your username, also the password, and then using your password and also the username, you will be able to log into your account and post your content.
Mm-hmm. So your deadline for the blog task is within a week. So what our plan is to do our webinars every 2 weeks. So we have done one webinar now. You will have 2 weeks off until the next webinar. we will send you a doodle poll again about the second one, but it's going to be either like, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know, 9 p.m. again. Is this time frame good for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So during those 2 weeks that we don't have a webinar, the first week is for you to work on your blog, and then the second week is for you to work on your lesson plans, which I'll talk about now. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what? Okay, so this is the so for every webinar, you will do one blog post and one lesson plan. And for the lesson plan, we want you to use the template that is posted into your Google Drive. And did we share the Google Drive with the students yet?
Yes, yes, we did.
So you have access to the Google Drive. What you will do, this is the one that you have, Social Justice Project 2019-2021. So there are general documents, student documents, and webinar resources. So for webinar resources, I mean, Adnan will go through the resources that we have at the end very quickly, but we share everything here. So you see, like, there are sources, there are, you know, the blog task details, and etc. We add lesson plans, you know, other materials. So these are the things that we usually share in relation to each webinar. And then here you will see other documents that you will go over these, but what you need to know at this point is the documents related to the lesson plans. So there's a lesson plan template that we ask you to use. I'm sure you are familiar with the lesson plan designs, but this one has lesson language related objectives, content objectives, and social justice objectives. So this is, like, you know, what we want you to do. So for content, what is the content you're teaching? Are you teaching, for instance, content related to marine biology, or let's say, you know, mathematical issues and etc., or, like, you know, concepts related to science? But then, you know, social justice objectives are, what do you want to achieve in this course in relation to social justice? Like, you know, how does, what do you expect your students to get out of this class in relation to social justice issues? And the language objectives are the objectives related to language teaching. So is it the vocabulary, or grammar, or reading, or listening? So you put them here.
Denise, can you just highlight one point at this? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes the issue that we have is the content objectives and social justice objectives are a little confused, or language content and language objectives are a little confusing. I mean, they are confused indeed. So content, you know, just when we were talking about textbook analysis, I said that when you go to the contents page, you see different themes. These themes are the content objectives. So it's about sports, it's the content, it's about sport. So through sport, you can teach, for example, you can relate it to environmental issues and then give some kind of messages or help your students acquire some certain skills within that particular team. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Great.
Sometimes you don't have content objectives because your social justice objectives cover the content objectives. So you don't necessarily need to have both content and social justice objectives. So what we want you to do is to write a rationale statement. This is, like, you know, why you are interested in this, you know, in this topic, if it's environmental education, the significance of it, how you designed it, and etc. So, like, you know, it's like you telling us a couple of things about the way you designed the lesson plan. And then, you know, add your materials here. If it's web links, add the web link. If it's an image, then you add it here as an appendix, and then, you know, say Appendix A, Appendix B here. And then, you know, you are probably familiar with this template. Are you familiar with formative assessment? have you taken a formative assessment course?
Not specifically, but we haven't had an assessment course.
Okay, so formative assessment is how you're going to assess students' learning throughout the lesson. So not like, you know, with a test or with a quiz and etc., but how will you observe in the class that your students are learning or engaging with the material? Okay. And differentiation, we'll talk about differentiation in our webinars, but towards the end. But differentiation is giving different learners different tasks. So differentiating according to their proficiency level, or like, you know, or their interests. Yes, exactly. And then we want you to write a reflection here, and the reflection is like, you know, you can focus on the strengths of your lesson plan, the weaknesses, opportunities, like, you know, for students, and potential threats or potential risks, like, you know, oh, like, you know, this lesson might go wrong because maybe, or students might have problems with this. So like, you know, things to pay attention to. Okay. So this is the classic lesson template, lesson plan template. And then there's a checklist here. And I'm not going to go over all of the things here, but you let us know if you have any questions. The checklist is about social justice aspect of your lesson. So are there content, social justice, language objectives? Are the objectives clear and accessible? Is the lesson, you know, transitioned into phases? Are there any authentic materials used, and etc.? So you don't need to address all these questions here, but these questions are good in terms of guiding you into the lesson plan process. Like, you know, have I met the requirements of this lesson plan, or are there things that I still need to figure out? We don't expect you to complete the checklist for each lesson plan. This is for just like, you know, guidelines. Okay. So you have, again, you know, after you post your blogs, you have another week to work on your lesson plans. And here is where you're going to, you're still seeing my screen, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So you, the student documents folder is your folder, and when you go in, you find your names. So what you're going to do, if Burak is posting his lesson plan, he goes here, lesson plan, and this is the first lesson plan. This is the first draft, so you just save it here. And then once it's posted, we give you feedback, and we will have an English language specialist who will also give you feedback on your lesson plans. And then once you, you know, have the feedback, you need to revise it and repost it under the second draft. Okay. So this is the lesson plan procedure. You have other the folders here, but like, you know, you don't need to worry about the social responsibility project. One quick announcement that I should be making is, so when during the seminars, Anna, you talked about the workshop, right?
Right.
So the workshop will take place in December during the weekend of 20 till 22nd.
Right.
Is this date okay for you? So this is the workshop that you will be coming to Trabzon. We will be covering all the expenses and we'll talk about your social responsibility projects. Okay. So we'll work on, like, you know, budgeting and, like, you know, what to do and etc. So the dates are, we'll tell you for sure, but you will stay for 2 nights. So from the 20th till the 22nd. Do you have anything during this weekend that you cannot come? Is everybody okay?
We checked your calendar and you do not have exams during that period.
Okay. For those who are in Trabzon, I think Sarvatorja, you know, will sort it out if you have things that weekend. But yeah, for the others, I think like, you know, yeah, let us know if there's anything that, yeah, we can do to help. Okay, so Adnan, do you want to show the resources very quickly, and then we'll finish up? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So there are different resources that you can use to develop your projects as well. So here are some ideas for just, you know, just consider them. You don't have to, of course, stick to them, but just to give you some tips. So you can focus on food. So like natural food stores, restaurants featuring local or organic cuisine, vegan or vegetarian restaurants, blah, blah, you know. You can focus on, if you are planning to develop and kind of carry out a project about social, not social, but environmental justice, you can focus on waste disposal, shopping, transportation, entertainment as well. So for example, if you look at shopping, you can do something about secondhand stores, for example, Craigslist. So you can just do something online to kind of promote secondhand usage of things, and, you know, to recycle things, or to kind of not to throw away things or dump or trash them, but if they're in good quality still, let other people just have them and use them. So you can do such things as well. So there are more lesson plans. So for advanced and young learners, they are posted in webinars in Google Drive. So if you just go to the Google Drive, you will see all these resources available there as well. So there are two different stories. So you can use, one of them is about climate change, and the other one is about, again, global warming. So you can use these two reading texts to develop lesson plans or activities around in your classrooms. So there are some environment-friendly links, like what are GMOs? So that means genetically modified organisms. So there's some information about these things as well, like recycling in Turkey as well, and why is sharing important. You know, you can just go and read them, and then you can come up with activities around these things. You can use these stories in the lesson plans that you will develop for this webinar. There is also a free webinar. By the way, we will post the presentation in the Google Drive, so you will have access to the presentation, and you can easily get access to the links as well. So this is a webinar as well. It's about you know, the future of the world. Is it gloomy and doom? So that means there are more threats to wait, or there is a kind of hope at the end of the day that we can just stick to and then do something better for our world. So more resources about our webinar. So you can just copy them and then go and make further reading about environmental education. So this is it, I guess, Deniz.
Yep. Okay, I just want to see if everybody is on the same page with us, or if you have any questions, you can always, like, you know, email us or write on WhatsApp as well. So yeah, keep an eye on on your emails for the blog password and, yeah, username. Okay. Okay. Have a good night.
You too.
And I will see you in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.